Axel's Garage. Today it's cold, it's windy, it just stopped raining for a couple days, and I have to do something that I really don't always like to do, and that's replace the starter because the TJ won't start. You know, I like to work on my cars, I like to do some projects, I like to do things on my terms when I like to do them. When the vehicle completely breaks down and now I'm forced to do something in kind of crappy weather, it seems like winter came upon us without any fall this year. It's a little bit annoying, but I figured it happens, so we'll go through it. Got the starter here. It's a reman unit from a local mom and pop style parts supplier, and you know, could I have probably saved a couple bucks going online? Yeah, it would have taken a couple extra days, and that's the reason why I went to my local mom and pop kind of place. I didn't go to AutoZone or Advance Auto or one of those places, generally speaking, because I usually get crap from them and they don't last too long. So, you know, if I'm not going to buy it online and get a good one at a good price, I'm going to go to the local mom and pop store and at least get a decent one. The price isn't always great. This is about $100. It's a reman with a warranty, so I should be okay. But just to back up a little bit, the TJ had a sluggish crank issue going on since about the time we bought it. I thought it was a weak battery. I put the battery on a trickle for a while, overnight, for a couple days in a row. It really didn't improve at all. The battery seems to have plenty of power. The alternator is putting out the right amount of power, but yet when I go to crank it, it's sluggish. It always starts, but it's just a sluggish crank, if you know what I mean. Now, this is my first TJ as a daily driver. I got a YJ chassis and motor and suspension set up here with the tub somewhere else that we're doing a project on. So I really didn't have a lot of experience driving a Jeep all the time. The only other TJ that we do have is my daughter's, which doesn't have that, and we only had it for a few months longer than my wife's TJ here. We didn't have that issue with hers. Hers cranks normal, starts right up. Like I said, this one started up, it was a slow crank. Went on the forums and asked a couple people that I know that have TJs, and they all said the same thing. They said, yeah, my TJ does that too. Yeah, my TJ does that too. That's normal for a Jeep. And I said, okay, well maybe it's normal for some Jeeps because I know my daughters didn't do it. I don't know. But I drove it and drove it and drove it, and then the other day I went for a ride to one of my kids' games, parked it, 2 hours later came back to it, didn't leave anything on, and I got a click when I went to give it a crank. Now, I assumed it was a dead battery. I assumed that battery that was giving me that sluggish crank was probably a little on the weak side or on its way out, even though it was only around 2 or 3 years old. So I tried to jump it. I was in a parking lot, in a school parking lot. I didn't have jumper cables. One of the guys or other dads had one of those little tiny jump pack things, and he put that on and it didn't do anything, and we just figured that little stupid tiny jump pack thing probably really didn't work. Checked my connections, all my connections were good. We couldn't get it. We gave it a quick push start with 2 people, and the thing started right up, and it ran. And I ran it all the way back home again, shut it off, same thing, it was dead. Checked the battery was fully charged. Went underneath, smacked the starter a couple times with a hammer. Guess what? I got like half a crank out of it. So it's definitely the starter, and I'm hoping that the starter was the whole reason for that sluggish start. And we'll find out, because now I got to replace the starter because it doesn't start at all. The starter only cranks just a little bit if you're smacking it with a hammer. Not enough where I could even get it started. So I'm going to replace that starter today. But what I did, and what I'm happy to announce, is I figured this out. This thing. I figured it out. Alright, so if you want to see some more videos about the TJ, you can click here. Now, I got to do it this way because I can only put it here. It should be there. You could click here. So I'm not putting it here, not putting it here, not putting it here. I'll put it in the description below. But as far as the link, I'm so happy that I could actually do this now. You can click here. And it was there all along. It was part of the YouTube software. It wasn't even in my video editing software. It was in the YouTube software when you go to the Creator Studio. Right here. The problem is they don't call it a clickable link. They call it a card. I don't know why YouTube calls it a card, but they call it a card. And I always saw that thing, create cards, and what the F's it called? I don't know. But apparently it's this, so click here. And you can see some of the other TJ videos. I put all the videos of the TJ in a playlist, and we do have some good stuff coming up on the TJ. I got a lift kit on order, a real mild lift. We're going to take some measurements of a stock TJ with stock wheels and tires, original size, find out exactly how high up off the ground those chassis rails are and those body components. We're going to then compare those measurements to this TJ, which has bigger wheels and tires, and get those measurements, and then I'm going to have my sons assist me in doing a lift kit to show really how easy it is to put a lift kit in one of these, and hopefully it does turn out to be that easy, and that'll be in a future episode. But today we're going to do the starter, so I'll set the camera up, I'll get the tools out, and we'll bang this out quick. Okay, well, I took out a variety of tools. It looks like the bolts, there's 2 bolts that hold that starter in. Those bolts look to be a 12-point head. I'm assuming they're metric, so I grabbed a rail of metric sockets, an extension, and a ratchet. I also, now I don't do this, you read directions on how to do things. They always say disconnect the battery first. I'll be the first to admit I don't always disconnect the battery. The starter, changing the starter is one of the times that I always disconnect the battery. And that is purely because of a starter changing mishap. When I was a teenager, I was changing the starter on one of my dad's old caddies, and it was late at night. I was under the car, and I actually fell asleep with the wrench in my hand, and I shorted out the positive post on the starter to a fuel line and had a little bit of a fire. Luckily didn't get hurt and do too much damage, but I'll never do that again. So I disconnected the negative side of the battery, tucked it out of the way so it can't make contact with that negative terminal, and now the power's cut. Underneath there'll be, like I said, 2 bolts that hold the starter in, and there'll be 2 wire connections, one small one and one big one. The big one is going to be your positive battery connection. So you go underneath. If you have enough room and you can get to it, it's better to take those wire connections off first, then remove the starter, so that you're not pulling on those wires once you get the starter down. The starter does weigh a few pounds. Sometimes it's a little tough to hold it in place and get those wire connections off with your other hand without putting extra strain on those wires. And in a vehicle that's, you know, almost 20 years old, you don't want to put that strain on the wires that are there or the connections that are there. So that's what I'm going to do. I got a couple wrenches. See if I can set the camera up underneath, and we'll take those wired connections off first, and then we'll unbolt the starter. It is pretty dirty on there. That it seems to be a spot that gets all the dirt and all the oil drippings and leaking oil or whatever fluids that your vehicle may be burping all seem to attract to the starter, so your hands usually get dirty. So I'm going to put on a pair of gloves. All right, I have the camera balanced very carefully up on top of the front differential, and you can see your starter right here. Here's your starter motor, and here's the starter solenoid. Right next to it, connections, positive battery terminal, and then the circuit that tells it to engage. I don't know what that's called, but I'm sure you guys will have to see. They're really not super tight. Positive battery terminal one is, this one isn't. It is making contact because it's working. So we'll grab a wrench that fits it. The little guy looks like a 5/16. It's probably a metric, but we're gonna go with 5/16 fits on it. So we'll spin that off. And take it from there. Wow, that's all gunked up. Yes, I said I was getting gloves, and I did get gloves, and then I got under here and I started doing it, and I don't have the gloves on. So I will put them on at some point before I get my hands really dirty. Millimeter fits on, so I'll use a socket. And we know for putting it back on, let the camera focus, that it's a 13 millimeter, because these Jeeps are a mixture of standard and metric. It's almost like working on a mid-80s GM car, where there's a mixture of standard metric throughout the whole thing. Alright, so now I got my connections off. I'm going to put my gloves on now before I get my hands real dirty. Now that I have my gloves on, I could
I could work my way at the 2 bolts that bolt up towards the engine, okay, from the bottom. And as it turns out, they are 3/8 small-headed bolts that are a bitch to get out. Alright, so now with my gloves on, you'll see the bottom of the starter. There are actually 2 3/8 6-point bolts. I thought they were 12s. They were covered with grease. Problem is, on this one right here, I can't get a wrench or a ratchet on it straight because of this big 18mm that's right here. So I'm going to have to spin this 18mm out that holds the bell housing in and get that out of the way so that I can get those other 2 bolts out, which lets the starter come out. Alright, so I'll put a 18mm wrench on one side, 18mm socket on the other, and hopefully, man, it was tight, but hopefully it won't be too much just to pop it out. And the 3/8 is not grabbing. Let's see if it grabs on this side. Oh, that one's even loose. Alright, so we got one loosened. This one is just going to be a bear here. The 3/8 is just not even grabbing on it nice. Every time I go to turn it, it just kind of pushes down on it. See if I got a 3/8 wrench. I can try to get on it to crack it loose. See, it's little stupid things like this that can create big problems. Alright, that's not working. Let's see if we can go with a 9mm maybe. Maybe a 9mm is a hair smaller. I don't know. The 3/8 seems to be rolling right off for some reason. 9mm is not even close to getting on it. Alright, I'm going to pull the other bolt out. All the way. Okay. Here's that bolt, and there's that head. I'm going to clean the head off and take a better look at this head and see if it's got some kind of special fitting on it. It almost looks like it's one of those spline drive ones, so maybe it wasn't meant for the 3/8. Yep. And that's what it is. If you can see the head of that bolt, that takes a special socket, and I was unaware of that. With all the grease and gunk on it, it looked like either a 12-point. Well, actually, initially it looked like a 12-point, but look at that. Luckily, I do have a couple of these sockets. Let me see if I have the right one. Okay, well, after going through my toolbox and digging through all my tools and sockets to try to find something that fit, I can't find anything that I have. Even my spline drives, maybe they might not go down small enough to fit this head. So let me see if you could actually, if it'll focus on it. Maybe if I'll put my face near it more. Alright, see that head? It looks like a spline drive. I just might not have the right size, but it's stupid bullshit like this that you know, a 20-minute swap in and out of starter is not going to take long because now I got to go run to the local parts store. Hopefully they have a socket without having to buy a whole set of something that'll fit this, and I could get this stupid thing out. You know what? I'm not going to the parts store. I'm running down to my buddy who's a mechanic and seeing if he's got one of these, because I'm going to go to the local parts store. They're going to beat me over the head for one socket when I could probably just get a cheapo set at off freight that will serve the purpose how many times I'm going to use something like this, hardly ever. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go run out and get a socket, and that's why we make these videos, to show you that I've never come across a starter bolt with a stupid spline socket on it, and now this just pushes you back, and it's cold and it's windy, and I want to get back inside because my feet are cold. But anyway, we'll get the right socket and we'll get that pulled out. Once that gets pulled out, you pull that starter out, the new one goes right back in exactly the way you want. So once you get your starter out with the right socket, okay, you just take your new starter, right, it's going to go back in just like this. It goes in and up. These bolts that I'm having trouble and I'm fighting with are going up like that into the engine itself, into the engine block, okay, and you tighten them up. I'm sure there's a torque spec for it, just make them tight. You don't have to kill it, don't make it loose either. Then on the back of the starter, you have your same exact thing that you had on your old starter. You have your positive battery cable goes here, and your small trigger wire goes here, and it's got a new nut and a lock washer on it, and you use that new hardware, and you're pretty good. And that's it, and then you're done. Reconnect your battery, start it up, make sure it works. There's no shimming involved in one of these starters. Some of the GM starters have a shim. We shim the distance from this gear to the flywheel. There's no shimming involved in these. These just go right up there, and they should be good. Somebody did tell me that you can shim them. I don't believe you're supposed to shim them, but if your starter is real tight and you get that, you know, you might want to try a shim. I think, and I'm not 100% on this because, like I said, I'm new into Jeeps, but somebody was telling me that GM starter shims, the straight across, not the angle ones, will fit on these, but you shouldn't have to shim them. I don't believe these starters are designed to be shimmed or not, but we'll find out. And we'll be back. Let me go get a
All right, back under the car, trying to give you the best angle I can. Alright, it's an inverted Torx. This is the name of the socket. I can't get this fucking thing off. Holy shit. Every time it feels like it's going to grab, it just pops off. Comes down. Holy cow. I never fought with something like this. Alright, plan B. What seems to be happening is every time I go to turn it, it pops off. It like pushes down. So I'm going to try using an impact driver on it. Not a lot of room to work with. Let me see if a 3-inch extension might help. Seems to be helping either. Okay, after a lot of cursing and screaming off camera, the inverted Torx socket did not work, and I'm finally getting it out by hammering on a 9mm socket. Alright, and we'll look at it once we get it out. Okay, so both bolts are out. Now we can fish this starter out every way we can get it, and it is out.
All right, it took a bit of wrestling. Turns out, like I said before, the socket was an inverted Torx. I don't have any inverted Torx. I've never had the need for an inverted Torx that I know of. When I borrowed the inverted Torx socket from my local mechanic friend, he said a lot of times, depending on the size, you can use a 12-point socket and it should fit on there and grab enough. So what happened? The one bolt came out with a regular 3/8 6-point socket for whatever reason. I guess it wasn't in there that tight. The second bolt, everything I put on it started to pop off. Really couldn't see up in there. It was so greased up to see what it was, but it was that inverted Torx, which kind of looked like a spline. So I borrow the inverted Torx socket, we get under the car, and what happens? It's slipping off. It's the right size, but it's slipping off. And it's slipping off because probably previous repairs, they used the wrong socket, or they pounded a 12-point on and boogered up the splines in that inverted Torx enough where the right socket won't fit on it well. So what do I have to do? I wound up banging on a 9mm 12-point socket with a hammer, and that's how I was able to get it off. Now when I put them back in, I swapped them because the one on the inside was the one that was harder to get to, and that's the one with the screwed up head of the bolt. I don't have the time right now to go run out and get new starter bolts. If I know I'm going to take that starter out again, I'll get them ahead of time. But I put it on the outside so that if need be, and I had to maybe weld something onto it, or get a pair of vice grips in there, I could get them in because it's on the outside. So I put the good bolt in with the right socket, the bad bolt I put in as far as I could with the right socket until it started slipping, and then I pounded that 9mm back on and gave it a little oomph to tighten it up. Made my electrical connections down below the same way we took them apart, only backwards. Came up top, connected my battery, made sure that connection was clean and solid so that you don't have any battery or ground issues. And now, will my lazy start be cured? Well, we'll see. Let's try starting it up. Alright, for the first time since we bought this TJ, it actually starts the right way. And you heard it, you know, a couple cranks. It's a real nice, strong crank. The starter, like I thought, did not require any shims. It sounds good. It starts nice. I'm happy. Now I cleaned up the mess of tools that I had to take out. Ridiculous. I had to take so many tools out to try to get this because of that inverted Torx socket. So will I be buying an inverted Torx set? I will buy a small, cheap rail of inverted Torx sockets, for the reason that if there's one on this, there's probably more, and having two TJs and a YJ in the family now, I'm probably going to need it at one point or another. Swapping out a starter is not supposed to be this difficult. They should be regular. Why would they put inverted? What fucking engineer thought that putting an inverted Torx there made sense? Let's put it there. There's plenty of room to put a regular hex head or even a small hex head. There's plenty of room. No reason for it. None whatsoever. Other than to make you go out and buy more tools. Which I know I'm going to run into again, so I am going to buy them. So they hooked me. Hook, line, sinker. They got robbed. What am I going to do? That's it for Axel's Garage. If you want to see more of our other videos, I got them in an other playlist I'm going to put here. Because I can. And check out our other TJ videos as well. Hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, all that nonsense. Thanks for watching.